You can't remember what you ate for lunch yesterday. But you remember one exact sentence someone said years ago, word for word, the tone, where you were standing, what you were wearing. You didn't try to keep it. It just stayed, uninvited, refusing to fade. 100 ordinary Tuesdays evaporated without a trace. Meals, conversations, entire afternoons, simply gone. But one sharp remark from someone who barely remembers saying it got filed away like it happened this morning. You could probably describe the room. The lighting, the exact chair you were sitting in. Most people assume it's because the memory mattered more. That's not it. Your brain doesn't rank memories by how much they meant to you or by how important the moment actually was to your life. It ranks them by something older, colder, and far more mechanical than meaning. Today, we're decoding why your brain keeps the wound and drops the day. And once you understand the system underneath it, you'll never look at your own memory the same way again. 200,000 years ago, your ancestors didn't worry about insults. They worried about teeth, claws, cliffs, a wrong turn on a dark trail. A single mistake could end a life in seconds, and there was no room for sentimentality in what the brain chose to remember. So, the brain built a shortcut, one so efficient, it's still running inside you right now. Anything that signals danger gets tagged, stamped, and stored with priority. Anything neutral gets discarded within hours to save energy, because energy was never free out there. That system still runs today, unchanged in its architecture, just aimed at a different set of threats. Except now, there are no lions in the grass. There's a coworker's comment in a meeting, a partner's sharp tone over dinner, a stranger's laugh, you're sure, somehow, was about you. Your brain genuinely cannot tell the difference between a predator crouched in the grass and a person who hurt your feelings at a party. It reacts to both with the exact same emergency protocol, the exact same flood of chemicals. Here's what actually happens the moment the insult lands. A small almond-shaped structure buried deep in your brain fires immediately, faster than conscious thought. It's called the amygdala, and its only job, its entire evolutionary purpose, is threat detection. The moment it senses rejection, humiliation, or mockery, it doesn't pause to ask whether the threat is real or purely social. It sends out a chemical flare, the same one it would send if you just heard a growl in the dark. That flare does two things at once. First, it releases cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream, the exact same stress hormones your ancestors got flooded with the instant they spotted a predator. Your heart rate climbs, your senses sharpen, your body prepares for a fight that will never actually come. Second, it flags the moment to your memory librarian, a structure called the hippocampus. And this memory doesn't get filed normally, tucked away with the rest of the day. This one gets reinforced, stamped, and moved to a permanent shelf. Neuroscientists call this a flashbulb memory. That's why you remember the lighting in the room, the specific smell in the air, the exact chair you were sitting in. Your brain wasn't preserving the moment because it was meaningful. It was preserving it because it was flagged as dangerous. But here's where it gets worse. This isn't a one-time reflex. It's a permanent bias baked into how you process everything, every day. Psychologists call it the negativity bias. Researchers Paul Rosen and Edward Roisman spent years documenting just how lopsided this bias really is. Bad events, study after study, consistently carry more psychological weight than good ones of equal size. A single sharp criticism can outweigh 5 genuine compliments in how it shapes your mood for the rest of the day. One moment of public embarrassment can quietly outweigh a decade of quiet, consistent competence nobody ever mentioned out loud. Your brain isn't being dramatic when it clings to the bad and lets the good slide by unnoticed. It's running an ancient risk management algorithm that was never designed for nuance. Missing a threat, back then, could kill you instantly. Missing a reward just meant a slightly worse day, nothing catastrophic. So it made complete evolutionary sense to overweight the bad. The problem is that algorithm never got a software update for the world you actually live in now. Now here's the part almost nobody realizes. It's not just that the insult got tagged as dangerous. It's that it never got closure. When you replay it at 2 in the morning, or in the shower, or halfway through a boring drive, you're not just remembering it, you're rehearsing it. Every single replay reactivates the exact same neural pathway that lit up the first time. And it restamps that pathway with a fresh dose of emotional charge, as if the moment were happening all over again, right now, in real time. Neuroscientists call this process reconsolidation. The memory isn't a fixed recording sitting untouched in some drawer, waiting to be forgotten. Every time you revisit it, you physically strengthen it, deepen the groove it sits in. So the insult you can't stop thinking about isn't actually old. Not in any way your brain recognizes. In a very real, biological sense, you keep re-recording it over and over. It survives because you keep handing it a reason to stay relevant. This is also why scrolling back through an old text conversation, the one where things went wrong, can feel almost irresistible at midnight. You're not just checking the words. You're feeding the loop, giving your brain one more reinforcement, one more reason to keep it filed under important. And there's a cost to this that most people never connect to the memory itself. Chronic rumination, replaying the same painful scene night after night, keeps your cortisol elevated far longer than the original moment ever warranted. Sleep gets lighter. Focus gets harder to hold on to the next day. Your body starts treating an old insult from 6 months ago the same way it would treat an active, ongoing threat, because as far as your nervous system is concerned, you keep confirming that it still matters. And here's the layer underneath all of that, the one that explains why this particular kind of pain cuts so much deeper than a simple annoyance ever could. In 2003, neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran an experiment that changed how researchers understood social pain entirely. Participants were deliberately, quietly excluded from a simple ball-tossing game, nothing dramatic on the surface, while lying inside an fMRI scanner. The brain scans showed something researchers genuinely didn't expect going in. Social rejection, being left out of a trivial game, activated the exact same region of the brain as physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, the same area that lights up when you stub your toe or burn your hand, lit up just as brightly from simply being ignored. To your nervous system, being excluded isn't some vague metaphorical wound. It is processed, neurologically, as an actual injury. When someone says something cruel to you, your brain isn't overreacting. It's running the exact same emergency response it would run for a physical injury. And just like a physical wound leaves a scar, a social injury leaves a memory your brain refuses to file away. Picture this for a moment. 40,000 years ago, a hunter walks back into camp without his kill, empty-handed after a long day. Someone laughs, just a small, careless laugh. Someone says his name like it's a joke shared between the group. He doesn't get physically hurt in any way, but the group's opinion of him just shifted. And in a world built entirely on cooperation and shared resources, that shift mattered enormously. In a small tribe, social rejection was every bit as dangerous as a physical wound. His brain didn't have the luxury of shrugging it off. It had to remember exactly who laughed, exactly what was said, exactly where he was standing. so that it never happened again. Now picture you in a bright, ordinary office, 30 years old, replaying a single offhand comment your manager made 6 months ago. Different century entirely. Same circuitry underneath. Your brain is still running that hunter's ancient software, treating a passing Slack message the same way it would once have treated a threat to your standing in the tribe. So the reason you remember the insult and completely forget the lunch was never about importance, not in the way you'd normally think about it. It was never a flaw in how your memory works, never proof that something is wrong with you. It was a system built, brilliantly, to keep you alive in a world that no longer exists in the same form. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do, with total precision, just aimed at a world that no longer matches the one it was built for. You are not weak for still thinking about it, months or even years later. You are not overly sensitive for replaying it quietly at night when everything else is silent. You are carrying a warning label that your own brain stamped, carefully and deliberately, onto a moment it decided, rightly or wrongly, that you needed to survive. The next time an old insult resurfaces uninvited, you don't have to fight it, and you don't have to bury it again. You can simply recognize it for exactly what it is. An outdated alarm, still ringing, for a threat that has already, quietly, long since gone. Don't forget to subscribe so we can keep uncovering the most fascinating corners of psychology together in our next video.